As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
Hi, I'm Vic Feazell, and this is the Vic Feazell Show podcast. It's a true crime podcast, and we are a primary source podcast, and today our primary source is Aubrey Robertson. If you've been listening to our podcast for the past couple weeks, you've probably heard 2 or 3 other episodes with Aubrey. We're talking about legal issues that are relevant to the DA's office in McLennan County. And we're talking about a lot of other fun things too. About the podcast, we haven't been on in like 3 months. We've been really busy getting caught up with our cases now that the courts are operating again. I know you've listened to me whine and complain for 2 years about the courts not being open. Well, they're finally getting back open, so we're getting back in. If you need a lawyer for your car wreck, we're the people to call. If you need a lawyer for your criminal defense, if you got money, we're the people to call. If not, you're going to have to get a court-appointed lawyer. Robbie, welcome back, sir.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you so
Still
much.
running for DA?
Still. And I feel like you ask me that pretty regularly. Why would you want to do this?
Why are you doing this?
Are you sure you want
Why
to?
are you doing this?
You know, I fell in love with being a prosecutor from the moment I stepped into a courtroom that first time and announced as the state of Texas. There's an incredible sense of empowerment that comes with that, but it was a job where I felt like I got to be an actual superhero. I went to work every day as a prosecutor and made a difference in someone's life. Whether it had been the victim of domestic abuse or a business owner who had, his business had been broken into, you get to go to work as a prosecutor and make people's lives better in a certain way. And I fell in love with that aspect of helping people. It's part of what I love about what we do here at this office on the personal injury side. We see people when they're at their worst, whether they're, suffering from extreme injuries or something, we get to stand up and help those people. And so that's how I feel about being a prosecutor too, is it's an opportunity to help the community I live in be a safer community. So as I mentioned earlier, my dad had owned several businesses growing up, and I had mentioned he owned a car lot, and this car lot used to get broken into a lot. It wasn't in the best part of town. And I can remember my dad spending nights in the shop at the car lot with our family dog and his gun, because the police weren't doing anything. And so I know that business owners like you, if somebody breaks into this office, that comes out of your pocket as a business owner. You can't not pay your employees because you got broken into. You have an obligation
Right.
And I saw that with my dad too, that he felt that obligation to his employees. And so, business owners, small business owners make up such a huge fabric in our community, and somebody should protect them too. And so that's, I say to people on the campaign trail, my 2 biggest motivations are domestic violence cases and these crimes against businesses. I mean, because somebody has got to stick up for these business owners and not use the law to punish them.
I agree. This election is in November.
Yes, sir. So election day is November 8th, but early voting starts October 24th. So early voting begins October 24th, goes through November 4th, and then election day is November 8th.
And early voting, that's when you go down early and go to the box and cast it there.
Correct. Early voting, you go to any polling place and you vote early. Usually the lines are not as long. And
if you mail the ballot in this time, chances are it might get kicked out just because it was mailed in. At least what I've been reading.
Well, what I will say is follow the instructions on your mail-in ballot very carefully.
Very carefully.
If you are entitled to a mail-in ballot under Texas law, follow those instructions very carefully. If you have questions, ask somebody. But yes, so the election's in November 8th, and vote early. That's that way you don't have to deal with the lines.
But if you come out and vote if you can, rather
Absolutely.
than mail it in, because I'm telling you, I don't trust some of these people not to just toss out your vote based on your zip code.
Well, and I mean, not to be too harsh on our post office, but I've seen a a drastic downturn in the reliability of the post office. So
Really.
Plus, voting is such an American thing. Go and experience it. Go do it.
It's an American thing, but I wish we did it the way they do it in Australia. In Australia, voting is mandatory.
Right.
You have to vote.
Right.
You don't have a choice, but everybody gets the day off.
Correct.
You go vote.
Right. It should absolutely be a national holiday. And I don't know if I'd go so far as to make it mandatory, but there are certain states in our country that have where you're automatically registered and you have to opt out of being registered to vote. Whereas in Texas, you have to opt in to vote.
Opt in, show 3 IDs
Right.
and a tattoo on your neck that
Right.
says Made in America.
And hope you didn't wear the wrong shirt to the polling place because they'll turn you around for that real quick.
Yeah, when you go vote, don't wear any political shirts.
Right.
I'd be even careful about the colors because they will turn your butt around and send you out.
They might turn you around if you just had a big American flag shirt on at this point. I mean, it's gotten a little ridiculous.
Yeah. I remember when the feds were trying to prosecute Abby Hoffman for wearing a shirt that looked like the American flag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they arrested him for desecration of the American flag.
Oh, wow.
And then his lawyer showed up with a motion to dismiss and showed a picture of Roy Rogers sitting on trigger wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, it can't be un-American if Roy Rogers did it. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, that First Amendment applies to everybody across the board, whether you agree with them or not. And they agreed with Roy, but they didn't agree with Abby.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Well, and voting, I mean, voting is so important, and it's not a sexy thing. There's nothing sexy about trying to get people to the polling places. And yes, it can seem like an inconvenience, but it is so important. And it is exactly for the same reason that the other thing I talk about that a lot of people get onto me for doing is when I talk about jury duty.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Because it's an incredibly boring topic, but it's so important. We need jurors at the courthouse in order to keep the wheels of justice moving. If there aren't jurors, then cases can't go to trial. And so I know it can seem like a waste of your time to stand around or sit in the courtroom or be inconvenienced by missing work. I understand that, but being a juror is so important. We need as many jurors as possible because if we don't have them, like I said, the case can't go to trial. So that means the cases get reset. And so you're punting down the road. And so if you get that jury summons, come to jury duty. Find a way to be part of the change. There's a lot of people who may watch the news and think, somebody got too much time in prison for a crime they committed. Or, you read the newspaper and maybe you think somebody didn't get enough time. Maybe you think they should have gotten more time in prison for the crime they committed. But if every time that jury summons comes, you find every excuse to get out of jury duty, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah. I have people call me sometimes and say, Vic, how do I get out of jury duty?
Right.
I say, you don't.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you how not to get chosen.
Right.
Talk.
Right. Talk. Say as much as much as you can.
When I go do voir dire, which is, for those that don't know, that's jury selection. I have a sign I take with me that says, if you talk, you might walk. If you have nothing to say, you're going to stay.
Yeah. Well, and I would routinely tell jurors during voir dire that the quickest way to get on my jury is to sit there
Quietly. Because then you don't know.
Right. If I don't know that you have a particular opinion or feel a particular way about something, you're going to end up on the jury. Mm-hmm. So if you have the opportunity to go to jury duty, do it, and talk to those lawyers, both the prosecutor and the defense. When they stand up and ask you questions, talk to them because they're trying to do the best for the party that they represent, whether it's the state or their defendant. And it's so important.
Yes,
Jury
it
duty
is.
is so important.
I'm Vic Feazell. This is the Vic Feazell Show podcast, True Crime Primary Source podcast. Subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a review. Hey, and buy some coffee too. We're still selling coffee, and we'll send you some a bumper sticker or maybe some coasters. So look at our page for our podcast. It's vicfeazell.com. And we put all of our documents up there that we've talked about. It's loaded with pictures. It's loaded with video. We'll be putting video of these interviews with Aubrey Robertson on our podcast website page. Robbie, the DA's office that we got now has quite a backlog, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's bigger than it's ever been. Now, partly that's pandemic, but I think it goes further than that. What do you think?
Well, I think blaming the pandemic is the easy way out. I think that our current DA, Barry, he missed an enormous opportunity during the pandemic to go through all of those cases that are filed at the DA's office and get rid of the bad cases. That way, when the courts opened back up, he wouldn't be sending prosecutors into court with cases they shouldn't be going in there with.
Right. Rather than just sitting at home twiddling their thumbs,
Right.
They could have been sitting in an office reviewing those files and getting rid of the ones that need to be dismissed instead of waiting until the Friday before the Monday trial and doing it when all that tax money has been spent, all that effort, the court's all screwed up. Yeah.
Well, and all those cases at the DA's office are kept on an electronic database. Prosecutors can access that database from home. So while they're sitting on their couch, just like the rest of us were during the pandemic, they should have been reviewing files, reading police reports, making notes.
Like we were doing.
Right.
Because
Right.
I had the foresight, even before the pandemic, to put in all that remote access stuff.
Correct.
Thank God we did, man. And DocuSign and the little apps so that it looked like we were calling from our desk when we were calling from the cell phone.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit. And we made use of that. We kept making a living and serving our clients even during the pandemic, even when we couldn't meet with them.
Right.
Because we had the technology in place to deal with it. The DA's office has that technology, but they didn't use it.
Correct.
They needed somebody at the top telling them, use this stuff.
Right.
Take these 10 cases and go look at them. Take these 30, go look at them. Yeah. Come back to me with a recommendation.
Right. And use that as an opportunity to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your cases. There's over 60 murders pending at the DA's office right now. Those cases should be gone through with a fine-tooth comb. Make sure all the DNA's been tested that needs to be tested. Make sure all the discovery's been given to the defense attorney. Again, because you don't want those cases to come back on appeal.
Right.
You only want to try these cases one time.
And you don't want to get to the Friday before trial on Monday and realize, oh my God, I don't have this lab report.
Correct.
Now what do I do?
Correct.
Oh God, I either have to dismiss it or I have to punt it 6 months down the road.
Right. Or the bane of most defense attorney existence prior to trial is that Friday afternoon discovery dump, where you get 500 jail calls where your client might have confessed to the crime, and it's on you as the defense attorney
to go through all 500 and look for the one,
right?
And it may not even be there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or the player won't work. So that's. I mean, you have to stop things like that because to go back to your original point, all of that contributes to the backlog of cases.
It does,
and our system is systemically inefficient in that way.
Yeah.
And so we can put in systems. There are ways to make that
if you
move.
had one policy in that office that would help move things along, I think it would be this. Just don't be chicken shit.
Right.
Let's be honest about everything. Don't be chicken shit. Don't be punitive. Let's just really see that justice is getting done here.
Well, and that's why, I mean, I've shown, it's been on some of my campaign material, this idea of doing right. Do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Yes, it might be hard. And like you said earlier, every decision you make is going to upset half the people and make the other half happy. Understand that going in, and then it doesn't matter. Right. Then just make what you know to be the right decision. And I think that's what taxpayers and voters would want in their district attorney, doing what's right, not the interest of anybody else, not using the DA's office as a weapon to further a political agenda, but to do what's right, to take cases, evaluate the facts, and those people that need to be sent away to prison forever, send them to prison forever. Those cases that need to be dismissed, dismiss them. Make the decision. Do the right thing, but make the decision. And that, more than anything else, is what has caused our current backlog. It's not the pandemic. It is a inability for the man at the top of that office to make a decision.
And I've been in that job. I've known others who held that job. I got to tell you, Barry is one of the worst I've ever seen, because he cannot make a decision.
Right.
Or he'll make a decision and then he'll flip-flop on it.
Correct.
2 weeks later.
Right.
Sometimes a week later. You did something a few weeks ago that I wish you hadn't done.
Yeah.
Tried to talk you out of it, but you did it anyway.
Yeah.
Barry Johnson called you and offered you a job, and you took it.
Right. Yeah.
Because you thought you could help, and you went in, and I think you were helping. I was following up on what you're up to, and I was impressed.
Yeah.
I mean, you took the bull by the horns.
Well, and I went in there knowing that no matter the results of the election in November, whoever takes over that office in January needs to have a working, functioning district attorney's office.
Yeah, you were going to try to clean it up even for your opponent
Right.
if he won. At least he'd be walking into a better situation.
Correct, because the people deserve a functioning office, and Barry suffers from this idea of whoever talks to him last. That's the person who has the most influence. So yeah, he hired me as first assistant, had his first press conference in his entire reign as district attorney to announce that he was hiring me.
Right, and I'm kind of a press expert. They used to call me the media hound dog. And I'm telling you, he screwed that up.
Yeah.
He totally screwed up that press conference.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just stupid.
Yeah. And to have that be your first one, and then a week later turn around and say that I've ruffled too many feathers in the office.
Yeah, you got fired, didn't you?
Right. Yeah.
You got fired.
About a week later.
Week and a half later.
Yeah.
I mean, he's off on a conference, comes back, finds out you've been making a few changes,
Yep.
ruffled a few feathers, but you were getting things done. You have to ruffle feathers to get things done.
Right. When I walk into a scenario and I see that the number of cases that each prosecutor has is being tracked on a sticky note, and I walk in and I see that cases...
Now, wait a minute. They were keeping track of the cases on a sticky note?
Yes. So before I moved over there and took that job, I asked for a distribution. I wanted to know how many cases each prosecutor had, what the distribution was. And I asked for that, and I was handed a sticky note, a blue Post-it note with the names of all the prosecutors and numbers, and handwritten out to the side and scratched out and rewrote. And so that's what they were doing to keep up the distribution. And there wasn't an organizational chart. I walked in and asked for a copy of the most current organizational chart. That didn't exist. And I don't know how you run the largest law firm in the county and don't have an organizational chart. How do people know who they report to?
I suggested that to Barry early on. It might even been before he took office, after he had won, or it might have been right after he took office. But he came and visited with me for a couple hours, and I gave him what I thought was some real good advice. But then he hired a guy named Nelson Barnes,
Right.
and listened to Nelson instead of me.
Yeah.
Nelson helped run that place into the ground by making all the decisions from the top down.
Right.
And, tell a prosecutor, well, you can't go under this on a case, when he didn't even know the facts of the case.
Right.
Now, when I was at MHMR, I was trained to be a personnel manager in what was then the Japanese system of management. It was building teams.
Okay.
And what you do is, instead of the guys at the top making the decision and it going down, we wanted the information coming up from the foot soldiers, because they're out there in the field. They know what's going on.
Correct.
It shouldn't be the guy in the ivory tower making the decision unless he's making it based upon all the data that he's gotten from the guys in the battlefield.
Right.
And Nelson wasn't doing that.
No, and the other thing that Nelson was doing was essentially trying to turn the McLennan County justice system into the Bell County justice system, which is where he spent all his time as a prosecutor. And McLennan County operates differently. Our judges operate differently. Our dockets are run differently. It's just not the same. So you can't come into McLennan County, hire a bunch of Bell County lawyers, and expect everything to work out okay. And so, that's it. Not having a good first assistant, especially if you haven't been a prosecutor before, not having a good first assistant is put you behind the eight ball right at the beginning.
Well, I was happy for you when you got hired over there. I really was. And I wanted it to be a success. And I really thought that you were the one that could get that place in order.
Yeah.
And it would be in order then if you win the election, or it would be in order if your opponent won the election. Either way, it would have been good for everybody.
Correct.
So I was real happy, and we talked. I know you were happy. You were excited. You were just
very excited,
glowing with the opportunity that existed before you to go in and be able to fix that mess. And then to get the rug pulled out from under you like that with no warning. How'd that make you feel?
It made it, in a way, it almost made me feel like I had been used, like they had brought me in to serve some purpose and then turned around and fired me. I think I told one of the news organizations that interviewed me afterwards that it was so odd because Barry had been in my office the evening before telling me how impressed he was and what a great job I had been doing. And so it was a shock. And like I said, initially it felt like I had been used for some purpose. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I was hurt for you.
Yeah.
I really was. I thought it was so unfair.
I will say your response, though, of I figured they would fire you, but it would take longer.
But let me say what I think about you. You didn't miss a beat. You were right back over here putting the stuff back in your office.
Correct.
I was happy about that.
That's so true.
Yeah, I was real happy about that. But oh God, when I heard that, when I saw that, my it just broke my heart for you, because it hurts.
Right.
Especially when you're in there and you're doing a good job. Other people have come around, even Barry telling you you've done a good job. Now, poor old Barry, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to dislike him.
Right.
Because I feel so sorry for him.
Yeah.
If I didn't feel so sorry for him, I'd dislike him. But I don't think he's smart enough to really know what he's doing is so wrong.
Yeah, and that's what I've told. I think his heart's in the right place. You know what I mean? I think he means well for what that's worth. But this is the problem, I think, too, with not having any experience as a prosecutor and coming in as the head prosecutor. Not only no experience as a prosecutor, but in Barry's case, even no experience really doing any criminal
work at all.
And so, this was just a product of the powers that be were so fed up with the way Abel had done things. They were so mad at Abel that it really didn't matter. It did not matter who had challenged Abel. That person was going to get elected. Yeah. And so they found Barry. And look at what they got. Yeah. And so now the powers that be want somebody else. And so, Barry's out the door. Yeah, he is. And so I'm detecting a pattern here, and I don't like that pattern. And so I think it's time for somebody at the DA's office to be in charge who's been a prosecutor before.
I did too. Now, you said that you thought Barry's heart was in the right place. I think Barry wants his heart to be in the right place. He just doesn't know where the right place is.
Right. Maybe
he's just all over the place.
Yeah.
I remember, I think I kind of embarrassed you one day at a criminal defense bar meeting when he was our speaker, and he was saying these things that he was going to do in office, and I just kind of chuckled out loud. Yeah. Because I knew he couldn't do it.
Right. He not having had the experience of coming up through the ranks as a prosecutor, especially if you don't have any criminal law experience. I mean, it's just it's ridiculous to believe that a person like that could then successfully lead that office. You just need the experience of having been in the trenches as a prosecutor, trying those cases, knowing what it takes to stick to that moral compass, And if you don't have that experience, I don't know how you can successfully lead. Again, I go back to elections are job interviews. I'm asking people to hire me. And so I have the qualifications to take on this job. And the way you know that is I've done it before.
Yeah.
And so I think that people should really, really look at the candidates, evaluate which one has the most experience, and make their decision based on experience, not on party. Because again, it's not a political office. It just isn't. And any movement to try and weaponize the DA's office to further a political agenda, whether it's to hunt down doctors in a post-Roe world and prosecute doctors, that is not acceptable. That is not an acceptable use of the DA's office. The DA's office and the courthouse is it's a tribunal. It is a place for truth to come forward. And when you do things to undermine the courthouse, whether it's the prison system, the for-profit prison system, all of those things that you do to undermine the criminal justice system hurt us as a community. And that's what's been going on for the last 4 years is that kind of consistent undermining of our local criminal justice process.
Yeah, I agree. Aubrey, I don't want to lose you here. I like having you working here, but I'm going to vote for you anyway.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And I ask all my friends and all our listeners to vote for you. Although this has not been a political commercial, it's just one of the side things I wanted to do. We've been talking about getting together and talking about criminal justice issues for the last couple of years.
Right, before I was even running for office. Yeah.
We've been so busy.
Right.
Yeah, and I like being busy.
Right, thankfully we've been busy.
I like being busy. Yeah, our intakes have been going crazy, and finally we're settling some cases because we can threaten the adjuster or the other lawyer with court.
Right.
Where the last 2 years we couldn't. Yeah, thank God we have our stick back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to vote for you.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I mean, anybody who wants to know more, I'm on Facebook, Aubrey for DA on Facebook. There's a website, aubreyforda.com, and it's FOR. So Aubrey.
And you've got some signs too.
Yes. So if anybody needs signs, I have big signs, little signs, lots of them. You can send me a message on Facebook. We have some out in the lobby here at the office.
Or info@vicfeazell.com, and I'll get that message to Robbie. Or look him up, Aubrey Robertson for DA. Look him up on Facebook.
Right.
He's got a lot of good video, a lot of good photos, a lot of good policy statements on his Facebook page. So give it a look.
Yeah, absolutely. And then vote.
Vote.
And take your friends to vote. If you have friends and family that don't often vote, take them with you. Put them in the car. Take them down to the polling place.
Okay, well, we're going to be getting back together for more episodes. I think we've got a lot to talk about yet, but
Absolutely.
I just trying to keep these down to about 30 minutes. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we close out this episode?
Just, again, that I think that right now, especially when there's been so much faith lost in our criminal justice system, that we as a community should come together and start to rebuild that trust, start to rebuild that faith in the system. And I think that begins by putting someone in charge at the DA's office who has a distinct vision and has the experience to be successful in that role. And I believe that's me. So I'd ask all your listeners to vote for me on November 8th.
Good. I believe that's you too. I got to say, I know your opponent. I like him.
Oh, he's
a nice guy. He really is. He's a nice guy. He's just never been a prosecutor and never supervised a staff.
Yeah.
But he's elected. We're going to support him.
Right. Yeah. No, he's a wonderful human being. He has a beautiful family. He's a great lawyer. If you're charged with a crime in McLennan County, give him a call. If you can't afford us, give him a call. I've actually tried cases against him. When I was a prosecutor and him in his defense role, I've tried that case I mentioned earlier about the officer who was almost killed. That was my opponent's defendant. So he was defending the guy that shot at that officer in the alleyway that we prosecuted. And so I love him. I think he's a great guy, a great lawyer, and we'll absolutely support him if he wins.
Funny thing about this race, though, is that you put a picture of you up there and put a picture of him up there, he looks like the Democrat.
Because of his long hair.
Long hair and beard.
Right. Yeah. He's...
yeah, you look conservative.
Right.
But you are conservative.
Well, and again, like you say, I can't escape the fact that I grew up in a Republican household and voted Republican almost my entire life. And
you did too.
Yeah, your distinction about being a conservative Democrat, I think that's where I would probably place myself. I'd place myself squarely there in the middle, where we have to be conscious as public officials with what we do with our taxpayer dollars. That's the conservative part of me, the part that says you got to be responsible, you got to take responsibility for your actions, but also we got to be inclusive. We gotta work to be kind to one another.
Yeah.
We can't work to further separate and divide each other as a community. It needs to be about inclusion and not exclusion. And so that's why I'm running as a Democrat as well.
Very good message. This is Vic Feazell, the Vic Feazell Show podcast. Subscribe, leave a review. Check out Robbie's Facebook page, Aubrey Robertson for DA. Give him a search, give him a message, give him your address for a sign. Send him a contribution. If you're not a criminal defense lawyer, he'll take a contribution from you. And buy some coffee from us and subscribe to our podcast, info@vicfeazell.com. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thanks, Vic. I really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Vic Feazell. During these trying times, you might want to just stay home. And at the law offices of Vic Feazell, we understand. That's why we're set up to handle your personal injury claim without you even having to come in. Just give us a call, and we'll take it from there. We can send any paperwork straight to your smartphone or computer. Don't delay, because if we don't put money in your pocket, you don't owe us anything. I'm Vic Feazell.